When it's something strange in your neighborhood, who you gonna call? Dan Aykroyd and Bill Murray and Ernie Hudson and Annie Potts and Paul Rudd and McKenna Grace and Carrie Coon and Celeste O'Connor and Finn Wolfhard and Logan Kim and James Acaster. Oh, and Kumail Nanjiani and Patton Oswalt. Did I miss anybody? Slimer. Ghostbusters. We call a lot of people. So I saw Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, and I'm gonna tell you how I feel about it. The good, the bad, and the nerdy. And since this movie is already out, I am gonna mention some spoilery things. I will be a little bit more detailed than your basic review. So just letting you know that in advance. So Ghostbusters Frozen Empire is about this evil ice demon named Garaka. He's basically gonna bring about the next ice age, but he's trapped inside this orb, so he has to figure out a way to get out. He also has the power to control other ghosts. So not only does he want to freeze the world, but he wants to take over the world by getting the ghosts from the containment unit that the Ghostbusters have and create his own army of ghosts. Ghostbusters Frozen Empire is also about that same containment unit being overflowed to the point where it's breaking up the firehouse. So Winston has headed up an entire paranormal research science center to be able to create a bigger containment unit, as well as creating new weapons to capture ghosts and even start to study ghosts so they can learn more about them. Oh, that's where Lucky is, by the way, from the last movie. Ghostbusters Frozen Empire is also about the Spengler family and Gary Gruberson, who was Phoebe's teacher, who's now her mom's boyfriend, but not yet husband or stepfather, as they work together in the firehouse. They live in New York now, and they're Ghostbusters out there busting ghosts, including a sewer dragon and other random ghost things. Ghostbusters Frozen Empire is also about Walter Peck, who returns. He's now the mayor of the city, and of course he's trying to shut the Ghostbusters down, but now he feels like he has a fighting chance because they have a kid as a Ghostbuster that's basically unpaid child labor, so he's like, I can get you now. Plus y'all also still destroying parts of New York City with your proton packs. And yes, he still has no dick. Ghostbusters Frozen Empire is also about Ray still running his occult bookstore, but now with the help of podcasts from the last movie, they're working together to make a vlog series where they try to find haunted artifacts, which leads to Kumail Nanjiani's character bringing in the orb that has an ice demon in it and trying to sell it before realizing that it has this evil demon inside. Oh, by the way, it also mentioned this ice demon was trapped in like 1904, I think, by a bunch of firefighters, and a masked figure known as a fire master, who is basically like a fire bender. So back in the day, this fire master was able to use the power of controlling fire to help capture Garaka. And someone in the current cast, can you guess who, is a descendant of that fire master, so now has to become a fire master themselves, so that way they can be helpful in trying to capture the ghost when it's released using the powers of controlling fire. Did I also mention that Ghostbusters Frozen Empire is about a teenage ghost girl who died in a fire with her family, and her family has moved on to the other side, but she has not. Apparently she is playing by Casper Unfinished Business rules. And so now she befriends Phoebe and they become friends. A ghost being friends with a Ghostbuster, what are the odds? But then does Melody, the ghost girl, have something secret that she's hiding in the reason why she's trying to become friends with Phoebe? Oh, and Finn Wolfhard needs something to do. So Ghostbusters Frozen Empire is also about Trevor finding Slimer in the attic of the firehouse and leading to a Tom and Jerry Roadrunner Coyote-esque set of sequences of him trying to capture Slimer, but failing, and every time he fails, he gets slimed. Hilarious. Oh, and Bill Murray shows up because he's in the original movie.
It's all dark and horny at 12 o'clock.
And also Annie Potts, but we do get to see Janine dressed up as a Ghostbuster in uniform, just like she did in the real Ghostbusters cartoon, so that's awesome.
Melnitz in uniform, yeah.
Oh, and the mini Stay Puffs are here as well because they're cute, they sell toys, and they're basically Sony's version of the Minions, or in my personal opinion, the Gremlins. And that's Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. So I enjoyed this movie, but can you see one of the problems with it? I did have a good time with this movie. I did enjoy this movie. It has a lot going on. There's a lot of plots, there's a lot of things, even if some of the stuff that they're showcasing is interesting stuff. The thing that I like the most about this movie, and I know this is cliche at this point, but I thought this from the beginning, this feels like a feature-length episode of the real Ghostbusters cartoon. And I love the real Ghostbusters cartoon, both the real Ghostbusters and the Filmation one with the ape. Let's go, Ghostbusters. Let's go Primeval. Where's that movie? But yeah, man, this is a cartoon. This is the real Ghostbusters as a live action feature length movie. And I'm actually okay with that. I would love for all future Ghostbusters movies to be that. In fact, I wish that they would bring some of the ghosts they use in that series. I wish they would make live action CG versions of them and have them be some of the main villains in some of these movies. Pull from the real Ghostbusters to make future movies, because when you're doing that in this movie, that's when I think this movie works best. I also got to give this movie respect on how they use the original Ghostbusters in this. They do not feel like glorified cameos. They have specific roles in this. They've expanded their roles beyond just being Ghostbusters. Yeah, they still suit up at the end of the movie. They got to have that fan service. And as a fan, I felt service, but I like that they try to make some extensions to the original characters rather than just having them show up. Even Venkman, they only have him in a couple of scenes. You only get Bill Murray for a couple of days, but what they did with him in this movie, I thought made sense. I particularly liked the scene with him and Kumail Nanjiani. It felt very Venkman. Either expand their character or just have them do the thing that we know that they're good at doing. Like, I love that Ray still runs his bookstore, and I loved what they've done with Winston in this movie, making him like the financial CEO of Ghostbusters Incorporated, you know, owning the firehouse with Janine, running this paranormal research science Ghostbusters Center.
Welcome to the Paranormal Research Center.
He's cute.
I think it's the perfect evolution of this character. I think Ernie Hudson is a great actor to be in that role. I think it's just a great way to still recognize, acknowledge the past of Ghostbusters, still have that nostalgia, but doing something that feels new and an extension of that, especially now that we have all these new cast members that we're trying to establish as Ghostbusters or other random characters. And I'm glad that just in general, there's a lot of humor in Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, because I feel like Afterlife, while I did like that movie, I felt like that the humor was a little bit lacking. And for me, Ghostbusters is about the humor and the comedy just as much as it's about the horror and the action. And when they do the horror and action, that's good stuff too. The whole opening sequence is at 1904 with the firemen and the people are frozen and they start breaking apart. That's some horror movie vibes right there. That was good stuff. And that whole action scene when they're trying to take down that sewer dragon ghost, I love that. That was like some intense ghost busting. And I like what they were doing where they were trying to make upgrades to all their different weapons. Like, I love the ghost trap drone and the ways they were upgrading their proton packs. That's the kind of stuff that I'm liking about newer Ghostbusters when they're doing that. That's why I wish Ghostbusters 2016 was set in this universe, because there was stuff they were doing in that movie with weapons and things like that, extensions to the proton packs. When they were in that whole Ghostbusters Paranormal Center, I was like, see, if Ghostbusters 2016 was in this universe, Holtzman, Kate McKinnon's character, she would have easily been working there. But instead they have James Acaster, who also is trying to do cartoon Egon hair. And I love that the movie even is starting to acknowledge, hey man, we can't keep calling back the old Ghostbusters. There's a scene with Winston and Ray where Winston starts talking, and I'm like, is this Winston talking or Ernie Hudson talking? Because he was just like, Ray, we are too old for this. We can't keep doing this. We can't keep putting on them proton packs, man. And then Ray's all like, but this is all I know. I also love that all the things that we got in our world are technically canon in the Ghostbusters universe. Like, they acknowledge that the Ghostbusters theme song exists in their world. They actually use clips from a Ghostbusters cereal commercial and a Ghostbusters toy commercial as part of a broadcast talking about the history of Ghostbusters. So I just thought that was an interesting meta thing there. I know some people are gonna get thrown off by the Firemaster by Drew Barrymore. I know some people are gonna get thrown off by the Firemaster thing, being like, okay, that's ridiculous. A person can control fire in the world of Ghostbusters? That's silly. We're talking about a movie franchise that literally made the Statue of Liberty move with an NES Advantage controller, okay? It can be done. They have some unique ghosts in this. Of course, they bring back Slimer. Of course, they have the mini Stay Puffs. But they have this one ghost who's a complete a-hole, this possessor ghost. He's just basically a red beam of light, but he can jump into any object and then bring that object to life. And that made for some very interesting sequences. The best part is it goes inside the Ecto-1 at one point and possesses the Ecto-1. And I swear that was an episode of the real Ghostbusters. Can someone confirm? I feel like that happened in the real Ghostbusters where Ecto-1 came to life. But that was awesome. That could have been an entire sequence in itself of having to chase down the Ecto-1, a possessed Ecto-1. It only happens for a little bit in the movie, but for that moment, it was really cool. It also possessed a proton pack once, and I was like, oh shoot, that is not good. I like that type of stuff because it felt dangerous. It felt like there were stakes. It felt the action. That's what I come to expect from Ghostbusters. So as you can see, I'm not hating on this movie. There's a lot to like about this film, but as I very much clearly displayed at the beginning of this video, there is a lot going on in this movie. There are so many random plots. And the problem with all these plots is when you get to the main plot, which is Garaka, the ice demon, needing to be released from his orb to rain terror, it takes so long to get to that point. It's so much build up. Oh, this is a threat. Oh, what's gonna happen when he comes out? By the time we finally get to that, it's the final act. So he only basically shows up hardcore in the final act. All those scenes in the trailers of everything turning into ice, That's pretty much the final act. And that's okay because Gozer was the final act, Vigo was the final act, but the difference between those and this movie is in those old movies, there were still other ghost-related things that kept happening leading up to that. Green Ghost in this hotel, Zool, oh, it's because of Gozer. It leads up to that. With Vigo, we see how dangerous he is throughout the movie. We see the river of slime, so it's all build up. But with this one, there really isn't a lot of ghost-related build up that happens. It's just more a lot of just talking about how dangerous Garaka is before he actually shows up. And it's interesting to me that that was a problem because they literally said that he's able to control ghosts even from inside the orb. So you think that would give a lot of opportunities to have other ghosts just do some crazy stuff and be like, why is this happening? Oh, it's because of Garaka. I mean, they do that with the Possessor Ghost. They do that a couple of times with the mini puffs, but not to the point where you're seeing a lot of like action sequences. There's no montage, there's no Ghostbusters montage like we got in the first couple of films. Like that's the kind of stuff you want to see in between. So because you don't get a lot of that, that's why a lot of these extra plots that are happening, while they're interesting, I thought they were all good ideas, but now they're starting to feel like they're just kind of filling time until we get to that final act, as opposed to being a build up to that final act. I think the whole thing with Phoebe befriending a ghost was interesting. I like the idea of the question of, do all ghosts need to be trapped? Do some ghosts just need to be helped? As opposed to just feeling like every ghost is a threat that needs to be captured. I think that's something you could expand on. It was just where it led up to eventually. I think what this all boiled down to is that this movie wanted this orb to open, but it didn't want a Ghostbuster responsible for it, which is weird because I don't think you have to even worry about that. Just have the thing open. Phoebe befriends a ghost and the ghost is working for this other ghost, be a ghost to be controlled to open the orb. I was like, yo, just orb found, thing open. Vigo, his picture got found and he already started shit. You don't need to make it that complicated. Just let the thing open and go. There's a part where Ray and Phoebe and Podcast want to get more information about this orb. So they go to the library and meet Patton Oswalt's character, who basically gives them all the lore dump about Garaka and where he came from and why he is the way that he is. And I'm just sitting there going, it's Ray. Usually in Ghostbusters, if you want to get some information about a demon and their whole history, you usually go to Egon or you go to Ray. Ray also has an occult bookstore. So you would probably assume that there's probably a book in there that has some information about this. So why do they have to go to the library to find this out? I'll tell you why. Because they need to show the library ghost from the first movie. Remember the library ghost? She's back. What is she doing there? Showing up like they're literally chasing after the Possessor Ghost and they just run down an aisle where the library ghost is there. Shh. Ray looks back. She does a scream. He screams and that's it. And of course they show the lion. Now, granted, what they did with the lion was pretty cool in front of the library, but I still was like, I feel like this whole scene is here just because they want to reference this from the original movie. They even bring back someone from the original movie that was in that scene to show up in this scene. I mean, there's a scene where Paul Rudd's character, Gary Gruberson, literally just recites the Ghostbusters theme song. When there's something strange in the neighborhood, who are you gonna call?
Tell you something else. What? Buster makes me feel good. Makes me feel good.
Come on now, you're better than this. That's a joke we make on YouTube. You don't do that, movie. Leave the bad jokes to the professionals. But always play Ray Parker Jr. Always. I don't care how many new versions of Ghostbusters, you can expand this universe all you want. But if Ray Parker Jr. does not sing Ghostbusters somewhere in that movie, I don't know you. That never changes. Everything else you can change, that never changes. Give Ray Parker Jr. his check. But all that being said, I still had a good time with this movie, man. The only thing I wish is that I wish that there was more ghost threats throughout the whole thing. All the ideas that they were presenting, I think were good ideas. Just give them time to breathe, which means they either need to simplify this and put some of these concepts in future movies, or they just need to work with the story a little bit to make this all come together a little bit stronger. It may not be the perfect film. It may not be the best movie, but it's still an entertaining movie. And I think if you're open to be entertained by it, then I think it can still work for you. But if you are very much about the nitpicks of what's wrong with the movie, then yeah, it's gonna be a problem. And I feel like I'm gonna say this again very, very soon about another movie that's coming out very, very soon. But yeah, man, I would see this again. Even flaws and all, I would see it a second time. For me, what I would love, I'm ready for Ghostbusters International. New York is great, but where are the LA ghosts? All right, where are the Texas ghosts? I need to see some London ghosts. I want some Japanese ghosts, because then you can start bringing in other culture folklores into this. That's what I want. That's the future Ghostbusters for me. Is I want to see Ghostbuster teams all around the world. And then that way you can play with different styles of Ghostbusters movies or series or cartoons in the Ghostbusters franchise. But, I don't work at Sony, so I can't make that happen. Plus, they probably more worried about Spider-Man anyway. So thank you so much for listening to my Ghostbusters rant and rambles. Let me know what you think of Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. And no matter what, so glad Ghostbusters continues, because busting makes me feel good.